Hello everyone, my name is Jack Sizemore and today we're going to be talking about Big Bend National Park. Big Bend is a national park in the Chihuahuan Desert in southern Texas. It was declared a national park on June 12, 1944. Although a visitor-populated area today, it was inhabited by several groups of Native Americans spanning from the 1500s to the 1800s. Beginning with the Chizos people, they were a conglomerate of several smaller groups of Native Americans that were discovered by Spanish explorers in the 1500s. The explorers would see the Chizos fighting an enemy that they had known as the Humano people, and they were seen throughout the century battling for territory and crossing paths with each other all the time. In the early 1600s, though, the Apache people settled in Texas and absorbed both of these tribes into their own. Then, after that period of time, there was a gray area as far as Native people in the state until the early 1800s when the Comanche tribe roamed through Texas on their way to settle in northern Mexico. This is known as the Great Comanche Trail and is a very important part of Texas history. It is always important to acknowledge the people that originally lived on lands that make up places like national parks. People like the Native Americans are an extremely important part as to why the national parks are such a beautiful place. These Native Americans took such great care of the land and animals in the area that they deserve to be acknowledged for their achievement. That being said, the purpose of today's video is to discuss the three most famous parts of Big Bend National Park, the three most famous landmarks rather, the Chizos Mountains, the vegetation along the Rio Grande, and the Boquilas Canyon. Before we get to our three main parts, let's look at a quick breakdown of the Native American settlement in the area surrounding Big Bend National Park. Here in the 1500s, we have the Chizos and Humanos people being discovered by Spanish explorers, and then we go into the 1700s and late 1600s when they're absorbed by the Apache, and then you see that gray area there where not much activity was going on, and then you see in the early 1800s the Comanche Trail and their tribe heading to north of Mexico. The Chizos Mountains are a large mountain range that takes up much of the park. They sit on land that was originally inhabited by a deep prehistoric ocean around 500 million years ago. Volcanoes that emerged from that ocean eventually erupted, and ash settled in the area that now holds the Chizos Mountains and landmarks surrounding them. This area of the park is remarkably interesting because the rocks that create those mountains are igneous, while the rest of the rocks in other parts of the park are primarily sedimentary rocks. This is unique because igneous rocks typically form in areas that are in the middle of an ocean or have a tropical environment, or where most volcanoes would form. Here we have a diagram of the volcanic eruptions that form the Chizos Mountains. We have an oceanic volcano over here. Here is our prehistoric ocean, no longer there in today's time. We have the eruption here coming over, and you see this volcanic ash coming down and slowly is going to build up on the desert floor and eventually create a mountain. The Rio Grande River is a large river that runs through the park. While the river itself is cool, the greenery that lies on its banks is particularly interesting. There are very wild-looking beds of both tall grass and marsh that take up the area. Known as the coastal prairie, these patches of grass are believed to have come from dirt-filled sediment that is laid on top of the clay banks of the river. This, along with the high water table of the Rio Grande, are believed to be the main causes for this tall wetland that lies within the desert. Here we have our diagram of the river, the Rio Grande, of course. We have the river here, and the clay deposits here, which were the original layer that were right next to the river. And as that sediment fills in and becomes the soil, and the grass grows from the soil, it gets pushed up because it keeps increasing and getting farther away from the clay that was originally there. The next part of today's video is going to be talking about the Boquilas Canyon. The Boquilas Canyon is approximately 17 miles long and spans the distance of the entire park. The walls of the canyon are sedimentary and are made up of thick layers of limestone. It was formed over millions of years due to stress and displacement in the Earth's crust. This stress primarily occurred between 60 and 130 million years ago and is called normal faulting. It causes the canyon walls to rise as the Rio Grande River slowly cut down through the rock beneath it. This diagram just shows what the canyon looked like before the displacement started, it was two pieces of earth that were just bound together. And this is a slight break from the displacement in the crust, and they're slowly going to start to separate. This diagram speeds ahead to what it looks like now. The canyon has formed over millions of years, so think about how slow that process happens, and slowly a deposit of water forms in that gap. And as the water erodes the rock beneath it, it's just naturally going to cause the walls of the canyon to keep rising and rising until it becomes as big as it is today. In conclusion, Big Bend is a unique national park with lots of geological features that have very interesting backstories. And while Boquillas Canyon, the Coastal Prairie, and the Chisos Mountains are all very special landmarks, they are only part of all that Big Bend has to offer. With both a rich indigenous history and mind-blowing geological features, I would highly recommend that anyone take a trip down to the Lone Star State to see this park for themselves at some point or another. Thank you.